Welcome, 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 everybody, to the Rob Black Show. How is everybody doing today? On this, what is it, October 13th? No? Yes, October 13th, 2014, right? Right. Here we are, and we're alive, and we are, oh man, well, we don't have any diseases. We don't got any Ebolas. We don't got anything like that. I don't think so. I don't. I'm not feeling fevery or what's it called, or achy. I'm not feeling any of those damn things. But I haven't gone to West Africa or any of the hot spots, so I'm all right. What a weekend! Did you guys have a good weekend? I had a pretty good weekend, so to speak. Watched a little football, put together a couple projects that I'm working on, and basically doing things that equate to getting ready for tomorrow. And when you guys see what we have planned for tomorrow, you're going to know exactly what's been going on. So I'm excited. I'm very excited for you to witness tomorrow. So that will be really cool. God damn. I'm like, I got beverages. I got, I know, I got the beverage in my hand. Didn't get a chance to go out to the store last night because of making the final preparations to what you will see tomorrow, which I think is pretty badass. Now, some of you might say, lame, but I think it's cool. You'll see it tomorrow. Had to go and get a drink this morning and not have my drink at the house. So here we are. Anyways, let's hit the top news stories. And of course, the only thing that's in the news is Ebola. Let's face it. Ebola and Ebola related stories. It's kind of like having turkey for Thanksgiving. And for the next week, you just have variations of turkey dishes. So you have turkey sandwiches, turkey casserole, turkey soup. But at the end of the day, it's all turkey, and it's all off of that one meal. We got a whole bunch of news to cover here, but it's all Ebola. There's just different variations of Ebola, but ultimately it's still talking about Ebola. So not to disgust people and mix Ebola in with Thanksgiving turkey dinner, but that's basically where we are. So let's start with our favorite hospital, and that being the Dallas, Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital. Yes, you know that hospital, very competent, very professional hospital that actually took in the first ever Ebola patient here into the United States, Eric Duncan, took him in and they diagnosed him with a flu. Yes, they diagnosed him with a flu. Even though he had about 103 temperature, they said, oh, you got a flu. Even though him and his girlfriend said, hey guys, listen, first off, as you see, he's African, can you tell? And they went, oh, well, we didn't even recognize. Okay. Secondly, could you tell that he's from a hot spot? Because if you read the paper, we put on there Liberia. We put on there he lived there. We put on there that he just came from the Ebola capital of the world. And, oh, really? We didn't even recognize that. Okay. And did you notice that he has all the symptoms, not just the fever, but everything else that goes with the Ebola? And they went, you know what? We're still thinking it's a flu. So they gave him some antibiotics and let him on his way. And Duncan and his girlfriend were trying to stay there. I mean, they literally were like, no, listen, we really think he might be sick. And they're like, yeah, he's got a flu. Just don't worry about it. Leave. So he leaves. And about 4 days later, he gets even worse. Like, really bad. Goes back to the hospital and says, hey, I'm throwing up. I'm bleeding from my eyes. I feel really bad. And they went, oh, you know what? Maybe we'll admit you. Oh, by the way, you got Ebola. So the Dunkster eventually died. He died. There was no experimental drugs for him. There's no blood transfusion. Nothing. He just dies. A slow, agonizing, painful death. Now, the hospital got a lot of grief for basically not following the most basic of procedures, like checking patients in, going through their history of where they're from, what's going on, things of that nature that help doctors treat things that possibly could kill the patient and or kill other people if they have some type of a virus that is catchable, like Ebola. So this hospital dropped the ball on everything. And don't forget, this is a Republican-controlled state. It's got two of the most prominent Republicans running that state, that being Governor Rick Perry and Ted Cruz. So there lies the fucking problem. But we can approach those situations later, and let's focus on the hospital. So Duncan dies. Now, after he dies, there's a whole list of things that have to be done, like the body has to be bagged up and properly disposed of. It's basically infectious waste. It's like nuclear material. It's like waste from a power plant that is leaking into the water supply and killing thousands of people. So the body has to be disposed of. The sheets, you name everything that has to be taken out of this hospital area and cleaned down. The ambulance that carried Duncan to the hospital after he was turned away and then eventually picked back up 4 days later because he could not walk, he could not move, and was throwing up and so forth and so on, that ambulance had to be disinfected. Basically they had to go through a lot of things to get that area of the hospital back up and cleaning. Now, Duncan's family is in quarantine. He was in contact with 50, 60, 70 different people. They've all been quarantined. And these are people that had no protective gear. These are people that presumably laid in bed with Duncan, put cold rags on his head. These are people that literally were dealing with Duncan with no barriers of protection whatsoever. whatsoever. Okay? Well, lo and behold, over the weekend, a nurse named Nina Pham, Pham. I think that's how you pronounce it. I mean, she's Asian, so Pham, however you would say, hey, this is an Asian name. She contracted Ebola. Yes, a graduate of TCU, so another Texas alumni, born and raised through the educational system in Texas. She became a nurse in 2010 and has been working at the Dallas, Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital. Well, she was working with Duncan. She was part of the team working with Duncan. She would wear protective goggles, protective gloves, the suit. She did everything she was supposed to do. And lo and behold, she came down with Ebola. Yes, this nurse is now in the very same quarantined area that Duncan was in, and she was treating Duncan. Well, now she's in that same area being treated herself. So this came over the weekend. She was feeling achy. Her temperature started to raise. I think they said Friday, and lo and behold, she has Ebola. So people were wondering, how could this happen? She was wearing all the protective gear, and the CDC chief, the boss, the big man, the head muckety muck, Dr. Thomas Frieden. He's the director of the CDC, and he said an investigation is going to take place. They're almost done, but what they have come up with is a protocol breach. I guess that's the nicest way of saying that this nurse fucked up. The doctors fucked up. They basically did a faux pas, similar to them not diagnosing Duncan with Ebola right out of the gate. And here we are with all of these problems happening with Duncan, or I should say with the Texas hospital as a result of Duncan. And it's all because of this hospital. You basically had somebody that came to the hospital who wasn't as infectious as he was when he showed back up 4 days later. When he showed up there the original time, he was not as infectious. As we hear more doctors talk that are not these sugar-coating analysis like Sanjay Gupta and people like that, and we actually hear real professionals, okay, legitimate professionals, they will say that as the disease, okay, as the disease progresses in the body and the patient becomes more and more and more sick, the disease tries to get out. It tries to live and find more places to infect. It literally is more infectious when death occurs than at any time when the disease starts. So as you're approaching death, that disease is even more and more and more contagious. And it's literally trying to jump off the body. literally. So when Duncan arrived to the hospital after being turned away 4 days later, that disease was just flying off his body. Literally flying off his body. Because remember, as soon as he got admitted, he wasn't drinking Gatorade fluids like the NBC News guy in Nebraska. Duncan, as soon as he was admitted, was on death's door. He just had a prolonged agony. He couldn't even talk on the phone to his loved ones. He couldn't speak. He was on dialysis. I mean, the guy was messed up. So when he walked into that hospital that second time, that disease was just jumping off his body. It was finding and looking for anybody to infect. So here's this hospital with this patient, and they are directly responsible for this disease starting to spread in Texas and possibly more places as it jumps state to state. And the fact that this nurse is now got Ebola, and they all say she was wearing her gear, and yet the CDC official says, listen, they broke the protocol and they messed up. Things were breached. They messed up. You have these nurses, these doctors, you have some union officials saying, hey, don't blame us, don't blame the nurses, don't blame the doctors. You know, we were never trained, we were never taught about this disease and how to properly deal with this disease and what to. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, aren't you guys nurses? Aren't you doctors? Didn't you go to school for a whole bunch of years? This isn't some vocational job. You're not working in a nursing home changing bedpans. You're in a hospital. You're working an emergency room. You're dealing with life and death situations. And your excuse is, well, we weren't trained in this. I mean, I just, it was bewildering for me to listen to this. And if you read between the lines, what the doctor or the head guy from the CDC is saying was that they didn't follow protocol. So basically, when they're wearing their protective suits, think about it, they're wearing their protective suits, so they are put their suit on, and then they walk in, and they deal with Duncan, and then when they get done off their shift, they walk into another room as if they just got out of giving somebody a proctological exam, and take their clothing off willy-nilly. But if there's disease on the clothing and you're taking the clothing off and you're not paying attention as to how you're taking it off or where you're putting the clothing to be disposed of, you're going to get Ebola. It's kind of like washing your carpets in your house, keeping your place clean, and people make fun of you for making them take their shoes off at the door and not track the dirt and crap from your shoes on through the house. It's kind of like the whole sense of defeating the purpose of cleaning your carpets if you're not going to have the policy of taking your shoes off when you're in the house. It's the same thing with the Ebola. If you're going to put this protective gear on to go deal with a patient, And after you get done with the patient, you walk out of the room into another room, and now you're willy-nilly taking off the clothing, and you're taking off the headgear, you're taking off the goggles, you're taking off the rubber gloves, but you're using your bare hands to peel away pieces of the clothing. I mean, it's crazy. And if you need to be taught, this procedure, then you shouldn't be a nurse and you shouldn't be a doctor. And I'd hate to get sick or have to have a medical procedure and go to Texas Health Presbyterian. Who knows what they're doing when they gotta scrub up for a procedure, open heart, brain surgery. I mean, do they know how to be clean? Do they know how to be clean? It's amazing. So if you think about all the people that have been with Duncan, from the day he came here from Liberia to the day he died, all these people that were in contact with him, literally laying in bed with him, watching TV with him, being literally within 5 feet of him with no protective gear. These people, as of right now, have not caught Ebola. But a nurse who's trained with a college education from TCU manages to get herself infected, and she actually knows the guy is infected, and she actually knows she's supposed to put on gear, and she actually knows the procedures to go about dealing with this situation. The nurses and doctors and union officials could try to deflect the attention that's put on the nurse and the hospital, saying, you guys broke protocol. You guys breached the system. We told you how to handle the stuff and you didn't do it properly. Just like you didn't properly admit this patient 4 days before he had to come back. And that's what's even funnier, that this hospital and these union officials and these nurses could actually literally stand up and say, well, we were never trained for this stuff properly, and don't condemn us, and we're good nurses and we're good doctors. No, you're not. You sent the guy home. So you're not. You're not. And that chart of Duncan wasn't just looked at by one healthcare official at that hospital. That chart, and Duncan sitting there on a gurney complaining that he felt like he was going to die, and just obviously somebody going, wow, that guy looks like he's from Africa. Just those basic observations, one would have to imagine more than one person at the hospital said that. And the fact that it went under the radar and everybody at that hospital went, nah, he doesn't have Ebola. It makes you not have any sympathy for a bunch of doctors and nurses saying, whoa, 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 this nurse did everything she was supposed to do. The Ebola must have just penetrated her protective clothing and got her sick. No, this nurse is as careless as her bosses and fellow co-workers at the Dallas, Texas hospital. That is just, once again, showing the culture of this hospital, showing the culture of healthcare workers in Texas, showing the brain power of the people of Texas. Once again, this is a state that we're talking about putting a vote on their ballot to secede from the United States, to have their own country, ultimately. This is the state that elected Rick Perry. This is the state that has arbitrarily basically closed down every Planned Parenthood and facilities that will help women in their health needs. This is that state. So it's not a coincidence that their hospital is incompetent. It's not a coincidence that their nurses are incompetent. It's just par for the course. It's Dallas, Texas Health Presbyterian. They even know a threat and can't even fucking deal with it head on without endangering themselves. So that's the big news. We'll see how this shakes out at the end of the day. The nurse is in not critical condition, but they say she's in the isolation unit. She's not doing great, but she's not as bad as Duncan was. So ultimately, she has a chance to survive. And the other disturbing news from this, and it's kind of like what I commented on when this Ebola situation first started with Duncan, and the CDC head came on and said, hey, don't be surprised if more Ebola cases show up. I'm just telling you all, don't be surprised. Now, he said it a little bit more elegantly. I think he said something like, it wouldn't be impossible to think that there wouldn't be any more cases. But kind of big words, impossible, things of that nature. But at the end of the day, he said, hey, don't be surprised. Chances are there could be other cases. And after this nurse just came down with it, this director said, guess what? There could be more officials at that hospital coming down with the Ebola. You know, he came out and said a breach of protocol, and you had people, like I said, union workers, nurses saying that the CDC boss was attacking them, and he shouldn't have said what he said, and it was wrong. So he actually had to come on about an hour ago and clarify himself by saying that these healthcare workers are on the front lines and they're doing their job and they're doing it good. And that's how he clarified it, but he didn't backtrack on the concept that the nurses at this hospital messed up. So at the end of the day, there's going to be more people coming down with Ebola from this hospital. And when the CDC boss says this, you got to imagine that he's been briefed at that hospital by other people saying this happened, that happened, and that chief of the CDC says, oh, well, it's probably 90% chance they're going to get it. It's probably a 60% chance they're going to get it. So just like a week or so ago when he said, don't be surprised if more people don't come down with it, guess what? He was right, because he knew. Just like now he's saying, don't be surprised if more people come down with it, because this hospital is incompetent. And well, we'll wait and see, and hopefully nobody else will come down, but this CDC official hasn't been wrong yet, and only time will tell. So that's the Ebola update out of the Dallas hospital and the aftershock, so to speak, from the old Dunkster. And to switch gears a little, we're still in Ebola. Remember I said it's like a turkey dinner where we have our Thanksgiving meal and now we're just eating leftovers. But we're coming up with creative ways to eat that turkey. So you all remember, taking a sip here of my Rockstar energy drink. That's what I'm doing right now. And this story is actually entertaining because it just shows the arrogance of people in the media, people that are quote-unquote celebrities, and how we can have things that just kind of steamroll into really bad situations because of people's arrogance. So, remember the guy from the NBC News crew that came down with the Ebola? Mushki Mashkbu, it's like the guy from Boston that has the pictures that talk about him, and it's like a real close-up of his face, and there's people playing on a West African beach, and then there's a picture of him and his dog, you know, those ones. Okay, so he was part of a news crew that consisted of a famous TV show doctor named Nancy Siderman. She's an NBC correspondent. So when NBC is going to talk about the health stuff in any way, shape, or form, they call on Dr. Nancy Siderman. When MSNBC needs to talk about a disease, whether it's swine flu or whooping cough or the AIDS, they call on Nancy Siderman. And they're like, hey, we got Nancy Siderman. Hi, Morning Joe. Hi, Rachel Maddow. Hi, Brian Williams. Hi, whoever. I'm Dr. Nancy Siderman. Well, Dr. Nancy Siderman, because she doesn't want to just be some crappy little news doctor. She wants to be like a Dr. Phil. She wants to be like a Sanjay Gupta, where she's got her own show and she's talking to three-titted women. You know, she wants the whole ball of wax. So during this Ebola crisis, she decided what's a better way to get out in the public and to make a name for herself that's bigger than appearing at 6 o'clock in the morning on Morning Joe to talk about whooping cough. Well, she'll go to Liberia, and she'll take a whole news crew, and they're going to walk in the death camps of Liberia. I say death camps because they have barbed wire fencing that's like 6-7 feet high, and inside this barbed wire fence are hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of African kids, women, men, all full of Ebola. They get treatment that amounts to nothing. They get food and water thrown at them by people in hazmat suits. Literally, they have a really famous video that they show that's made its way around the old YouTuber on the old World Wide Web. Google it. And that's of a little African child getting a bottle of water thrown at her. Bounces off her chest, but she gets it and walks away drinking her water. And it's a blonde lady in a hazmat suit smiling like, here you go, little infected African. Boom. So these are the death camps of West Africa, Ebola. Okay? And Nancy Siderman and her crew basically went into these death camps to show the world or at least the United States, or at least Morning Joe, you know, the news outlets that have 800,000 people watching them. I think I read that the nightly news, Brian Williams sometimes gets like 6 million people that will watch that nightly news. But he's not the number one nightly news guy. The ABC Pretty Guy is the number one guy. Anyways, so Siderman is there to get big ratings for the million people that are watching any one of these shows. And she's showing everybody how she washes her hands with the bleach and this whole procedure. Well, while she's doing this, and people are going, why? You're not even a healthcare worker. You're not even somebody that's sitting in their nice house, or they're sitting in their Starbucks, their local Starbucks, having a chai latte, and they decide that they're going to quit their job and work as a volunteer for Doctors Without Borders, and they're going to do mission work and help these poor people in West Africa. Nancy Siderman, that's not even you. You basically said, I'm going to exploit these dying Africans because if I go there and I'm in the front lines, we've already are sending military personnel there. People are saying this could be like an epidemic bigger than AIDS. Well, if I go there and I cover the story, I'm definitely going to get a Peabody Award or a Pulitzer, or, God damn it, I'll be like those deep throat journalists. People remember my name. So that's why Nancy Siderman went there. That's it. To get what? A story on something that everybody already knows? Everybody's already seen these horrific images of just people dying in the street. People are decaying because the bodies can't be buried, so they're just laying out in the street. Well, we already know all this. We already know the death and destruction that's going on. So Nancy Siderman went there for her own greedy purposes. She's not trying to do anything other than get a story. That's it. And it's a story that everybody knows. But it's a story that is dangerous, and it's edgy, and she could possibly get disease from it. So in turn, it makes what she's doing seem important, because she's out there on the front lines like Walter Cronkite in Vietnam. Well, lo and behold, her cameraman gets Ebola. Yes. And the cameraman is not somebody that wasn't with Nancy Siderman. They even explained that her and the cameraman were going through a border checkpoint, and that's where the cameraman's temperature started to rise. So this camera guy, Mushki Boo 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 Boo, was somebody that was with the Siderman, somebody that was with the crew, somebody that you would presumably imagine that ate with them. They sat around and drank African chai lattes. It wasn't like he showed up, took a picture, and then went off to some Ebola cave. He was part of them. So he hits Siderman up that night and says, hey, my temperature's starting to really skyrocket. And of course, the red flags went up, sirens started blaring, and lo and behold, he tested positive for Ebola. So they hired a jet to fly him back to the United States and off to Nebraska, where he could get hospital care. And the rest of the crew, Siderman and whatever other workers, boom operators that were part of that crew, were then told, hey, you guys need to be quarantined. Who knows if you are going to come down with it. So they all voluntarily decided that they were going to quarantine themselves. Nancy Siderman even got on TV when she was explaining what was going on and said, we are all at very low risk, but we are also quarantining ourselves for 21 days because that's the incubation period. You know, we want to be safe. We don't want to create a bigger problem that can already be done. And people went, wow, that's really responsible, Nancy Siderman. That's the doctor you are. Well, lo and behold, ladies and gentlemen, Nancy Siderman violated her own. Do you realize what I just said? Nancy Siderman violated her own isolation, quarantined fucking deal. So Nancy Siderman was caught basically traveling in a car with presumably her boyfriend or husband, picking up food at random restaurants. I mean, literally, Nancy Siderman is above Ebola. Literally, Nancy Siderman violated her own quarantine. How is that for the arrogance of being a quasi-celebrity? How's that for just telling the American people to go fuck themselves? Amazing. So, lo and behold, the New Jersey health officials got word of all this, and they ordered Nancy Siderman and her crew. They ordered them by New Jersey State Health Department. They ordered them to go into a 21-day quarantine. So now, Nancy Siderman and her crew have been basically, if you want to call it, arrested. They are basically doctor arrested. They are health department arrested. That's basically what happened. The New Jersey fucking health department has now put an order of quarantine on Nancy Siderman and her crew. Is that just pathetic? This is a doctor. This is somebody who has a degree. This is somebody that goes on different news stations and preaches about health and safety. And here she is hanging out in her car, picking up food at different restaurants. She's out there hanging out, partying it up, while she's supposed to be in quarantine. And the rest of her crew are out there having a good time. Because they, as Nancy Siderman will say, they are low risk. Low risk. If there's a risk, that's enough. Like, are these people so goddamn important that they couldn't do nothing for 21 days? Are they that cool that they couldn't do anything for 21 days? They just had to leave their house. They just had to expose other people to this disease. Again, it just shows the arrogance of celebrities or quasi-celebrities. And it punctuates this Nancy Siderman and what an irresponsible a-hole she is. Because the concept that you have to now be ordered by the New Jersey State Health Department to be quarantined is pretty embarrassing. I mean, that means that you, a doctor, violated your own protocols and own words of sound doctor advice. It's lunacy. It is absolutely lunacy. And that's Nancy Siderman. And that has to do with Ebola. And that is Ebola in a leftover soup. So we've had Ebola for our main Thanksgiving meal with the Dallas lady. Now we just had Ebola in a leftover soup that I made that Katie Summers loved. And now we'll move on to our fourth day of leftovers, because we've had soup for 2 days in a row. And now we're going to have our sandwich with the Republicans and Ebola. And this, once again, is quite amusing because it just shows you how Republicans, when they don't have anything to pin on this president when it comes to the truly important things in our country, which is jobs, economy, things of that nature, which are doing great. So they attack the president on things like Ebola and ISIS, which at the end of the day, the president really can't do anything about certain situations when it comes to Ebola and ISIS, when his own government and people working in the government that he is supposed to be the boss of do not let him do his job properly. And now let me hit you with this. So you've got people, Republicans, that are basically saying we need to have like a boss. We need to have like a point man. We need to have a unified voice that is out there talking to us about Ebola. Yeah, we got the CDC, but we need to have like an Ebola specialist. We need to have a czar, an Ebola czar. Yeah, that's what we need. We need to have like, just like a man that represents the people, that is possibly a doctor, and he is like the biggest, baddest guy in the world, and he's the Ebola czar. He's the man. Okay, awesome. Well, lo and behold, John McCain, he gets on State of the Union with Candy Crowley, and of course does his Obama bashing. Now, you got to remember, you're talking about John McCain. First off, you're talking about someone who's about 107 years old. And anybody that is at that age is old, grumpy, and wears Depends because they poop their pants. Okay? Remember that. Secondly, remember John McCain got his ass kicked in the presidential election by Obama. Remember that. This is a guy that's been running for president for a lot of years. He ran against Bush in the primaries, lost. This is a guy that has been doing everything that he has been told to do by the Republicans, by the leaders of the Republicans, so that he could become president. To the point where he listened to them say, you need a woman. And he went, okay, well, what about this one? They no. You don't want a qualified woman. You need a woman that will look good on a podium. A woman that will appeal to Republicans who want to masturbate. And he went, okay. And they gave him Sarah Palin. Well, this is a man that despises Obama because everything that John McCain did failed when it came to running for president. He has a legacy of actually, one, being the guy that lost to the first black president. So he's got that dubious honor. Second, he's the guy that brought Sarah Palin in to the political world. And three, he poops his pants. That is basically his legacy that he has until the day he dies. That's it. That is it. That is McCain. So he went on Face the Union, or State of the Union, Ken Crowley, and said, Obama's not doing enough. It's not doing enough. He needs to appoint a czar. That's exactly what he said. He needs to appoint a czar. He needs to appoint somebody that is just focused on Ebola. Okay? That's what he needs to do. And he kept coming back and saying, a czar. Obama needs to appoint a czar. Okay, sounds pretty important there, McCain. So Obama needs to appoint a czar. He needs to appoint a guy that is out in the front, that represents a situation when it comes to medical issues and things of that nature, preferably somebody that's a doctor, and he's like a czar. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this just shows you how completely ass backwards Republicans are. And if you actually listen to Republicans and these midterms coming up, and in 2016, and you believe the bullshit that they are spewing to you, you are extremely uneducated and you're not intelligent whatsoever. Plain and simple. And I hope I hear my Democratic friends talking about this McCain situation, because if they don't, that just shows you what I've been saying, and that being Democrats are weak, spineless, gutless. But I will continue. Now, back in Obama's first term, Obama basically appointed somebody that would be the car czar. That's what he called it, the car czar. And they oversaw what was going on with the auto companies. And along with the car czar and the president and other people in the administration, they bailed out the car companies and got them profitable again to where they are making money. It worked. So this process was going on in Obama's first term, and it worked. Well, Senator McCain took to Twitter. The fact that he knows how to operate Twitter is pretty amazing to me. But he went to Twitter and said, and I quote, Obama has more czars in this administration than the Russians' 3-century-long Romanov dynasty. I don't know what a Romanov dynasty is, but I imagine this was some political power in Russia a very long time ago. And they had czars. And McCain was basically telling everybody in every single interview he could conduct that Obama has czars for everything. He's got a czar for this, and a czar for that, and a czar for this, and a czar for that. And this tweet was his talking point. And if you look when he went on different talk shows, different morning talk shows, different night talk shows, anything that had a political forum, that was his little zinger. The president has more czars than the Russians' 3-century-long Romanov dynasty. Like, you know how he laughed. Yeah, I'm funny, aren't I? Kind of like a Bush laugh. That's what McCain with his little gimpy arm. So that's what McCain was marching around saying. Don't you see where that kind of contradicts what he just said over the weekend? That Obama needs to appoint a czar to be in charge of the Ebola situation? I mean, this is a guy that 5 years ago was screaming that Obama has too many czars, and he's acting like a Russian dynasty. And here we are 5 years later, and McCain saying, God damn it, Obama needs to make a czar of Ebola. He needs to have a leader, a czar. Okay, all right. You Republicans are beyond amazing. You're just amazing with the bullshit that you speak. Right there is something, ladies and gentlemen, that when you're wondering if you should vote Republican or Democrat, just that shows you how desperate Republicans are to attack this president on anything and everything. And if they really could just get away with saying, don't vote for this president's policies because he's black, they would. If they could get away with telling people not to vote for Democrats during the midterm elections because they are part of a party that nominated a black to become their president, they would. They don't do it because they can't. Well, at least they can't say it so blatant like I am saying it. They do it in other ways. We need to take our country back. You know, they say these code words like that. This president is a dictator. This president is a liar. This president is as close to Hitler. Those are the things. And they're all code words for he's black, he's black, he's black, he's black, and he is black. So, to sprinkle the black goodness on top of this cake, we will. When McCain is talking about a czar, when McCain is talking about we need a leader, we need somebody that possibly is a doctor that could talk to the American people more than the CDC doctor. Somebody that stands there in front of the American people as a representative of the White House. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that would be the Surgeon General. Remember, you had Surgeon Generals like C. Everett Koop. He's the guy that invented the beard with no mustache, like the Abraham Lincoln thing, brought it back in style. Okay. Well, we don't have a Surgeon General. Okay? President Obama nominated one about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And like all appointments in the office of our president, when he appoints the Surgeon General or he appoints judges, these types of people, they have to be confirmed by the Senate. Well, this person, his name is Dr. Vivek Murthy, Vivek Murthy, Murthy. He's an Indian fella. Okay, young, very intelligent, and a doctor. Oh my God. Yes, he's young, intelligent, Indian, and a doctor. A couple of those things are stereotypes, but it's all right because a young Indian doctor is cool and intelligent to be the Surgeon General of the United States. So normally, at a time like this, we would have the Surgeon General. Now, the Surgeon General is not exactly a position that is on the front lines of taking care of things of magnitudes that you would see Secretary of State or someone like that. But every so something happens and the Attorney General attacks it, whether it's smoking or AIDS, things of that nature. It happens, and when it happens, that is what usually puts the Surgeon General out there, where people are like, oh, wow, okay, Surgeon General, here it is. And we associate the Surgeon General with whatever crisis happens to be going on at that moment. And like I said, it doesn't happen too often, but it's kind of like hitting a game-winning home run in the bottom of the ninth with 2 outs, bases loaded. Those types of situations that don't happen a lot, but when they do, and the person steps up and handles the situation, they're remembered forever. So this is one of those instances where the Surgeon General would be out in the front talking about Ebola. He would be making his rounds on TV. They would be going, the United States Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, and he would be, hi, how are you? I'm speaking for the president, I'm speaking for the White House, here's the situation. You'd actually see the Surgeon General go down to the Atlanta hospitals where people are being treated. He would be out there. People would then get a sense of, wow, our government is out there. Yeah, look, our Surgeon General is doing his Surgeon General-y thing. Awesome. Well, we don't have that. Why? Because a tweet that this Surgeon General made the nominee to be the Surgeon General, he made a tweet that enraged not any of the politicians, it enraged the NRA. And if it enraged the NRA, then it enraged Republicans, because the NRA then would say, hey, guess what? If you don't oppose this nomination for Surgeon General, we're not going to give you guys money in your re-election campaigns. So in turn, all the Republicans basically filibustered and said, we're not going to approve this guy for Surgeon General. Because in a tweet, he said that gun violence is a public health issue. That's all he tweeted. That he felt gun violence was a public health issue. Just like Ebola is a public health issue, just like AIDS is a public health issue, he feels gun violence. Yes, he feels people with guns shooting each other dead is a public health issue. Go figure. Public is not healthy if they're shot with a gun and they're dead. Seems rational and logical to me. Well, guess what? The NRA didn't like it. They told the Republicans, don't let this guy become nominated and become the Surgeon General. And lo and behold, we don't have a Surgeon General because the Republicans blocked this guy from being confirmed. So when Republicans say we need a czar, we need a person that is talking about Ebola, that's handling Ebola, somebody that's out there doing press conferences about Ebola, that would be the Surgeon General. So here is another example of Republicans blaming the president for something that they created. So they're blaming the president for not having a czar, even though they complain that the president has too many czars. In this instance, they want a czar. And we don't have a czar who would be known as the Surgeon General because Republicans will not confirm the man that Obama appointed to be Surgeon General, a doctor, because he tweeted that gun violence is a public health issue. So in turn, the president is incompetent, he's an asshole, because the Republicans won't give him the Surgeon General because the Surgeon General tweeted something about guns and the NRA doesn't like that, and Republicans have to suck the money teat of the NRA. And so in turn, we have nobody out in the front to talk about Ebola because of the president? Are you serious? There you go. You see that whole circle of shit, and somehow Democrats will let Republicans and Republican talk shows and the newspapers, people attack the president on not having somebody in the front, and nobody, like I just said, will defend the president. You will not hear Democrats defending the president. You will not hear Democrats beating the drum of what I just said. You won't. You might see a little article here and there. You might see a little blurb here and there. But if you tune on your nightly shows or your morning shows, your Wolf Blitzers, you won't see him with a prominent Democrat. You won't see him with Barbara Boxer. You won't see him with Feinstein. You won't see him with any of these the Pelosi's, Reeds. You won't see any of them beating the drum about what I just said when it comes to our Surgeon General and the John McCain czar comments. They just sit back. They just sit back because they're gutless, they're spineless, and they're weak. And that's what they do. And it sucks that I am a Democrat. It sucks that I have to be in this party undying because it is full of gutless turds. But the alternative is Republican a-holes that are destroying this country and have destroyed this country. So you're kind of stuck with the lesser of the two evils. And the lesser of that evil is the Democrats. They just need to get some balls and fight. And that's something that they lack. So there's the third installment of the Ebola meal. And now I'm full of Ebola. I am. I'm full of it. I've had the dinner, I've had the soup, and now I just had the sandwich. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break. And when we come back from our break, we're going to go over some ISIS. We're going to go over some entertainment news. We're going to go over a bunch of things that are exciting, and we're going to come on aboard. It's not the Love Boat. It's not the Love Boat. We call it the Rob Black Boat. And we'll be right back. So join us.